What a day. To Frank. The meeting with the new customer went south. I think I need to go hiding for a little while. I'm pretty sure the customer will come looking for me. He might bring some friends with him. Keep the business running. I'll get back when the dust is settled. Andy. Godspeed, Frank.
Frankie cannot read.
It's been 3 months since I left my ranch. I hope Frank's doing okay. I left my car to the ranch because I didn't want to draw attention. I bought this nice Indian motorcycle on the way back here. It sure is a sweet ride. It needs a lot of oil to run. I think I'm going to see the local blacksmith on the way home. He used to have some oil for sale. Then I'm going to meet Frank and get the moonshine business running again, hoping that the dust has settled from the meeting that went bad.
Hello, sir.
You got a lot of nerve showing up here.
What do you mean, sir?
You really don't know? They got these all around the place. Says alive or dead. For your head.
God damn it! Did the customer turn me in? He was the one trying to rob me.
Well, I didn't know about that, but if I was you, I wouldn't stick around here. A lot of people want that reward for your head.
Damn it! Well, I believe that. Have you seen Frank? I hope they haven't found him yet.
He's still alive? Haven't seen him in years.
Well, I hope so. I need to go see him. Hey, I almost forgot. I need oil for this motorcycle.
Yes, some mobile oil should be best for your engine.
Okay, thanks. Let's fill her up and I'll get going.
Frank! Don't shoot! It's me!
Well, I'm glad to see you alive. How's it going? Did you get my letter?
Yes, but Frankie can't read. Frankie make moonshine. Frankie drink moonshine. Frankie make a special moonshine with herbs. It will show you the future.
Well, that sounds like a special moonshine. Well, anyway, I'm here now, but I had to go hiding for a while. On my way here, I visited the blacksmith for some oil. Do you remember the last meeting with the customer? That bastard has turned me into the sheriff. There were wanted posters everywhere. $500 for my head.
Frankie don't like this.
Me neither. I think it's best if we go see the sheriff and talk to him. Remember him? He used to buy a lot of moonshine from us.
Frankie remember, yes.
The problem is that nobody can see us on the way to the sheriff's department. I think it's best if we go by foot through the cattle fields of Leafville and then through the forests.
Yes, but lot of walking.
I'm afraid so. Are you ready to leave?
Yes, Frankie packs moonshine.
This seems like a nice place to make a camp and start a fire.
Yes, Frankie don't like walking.
Trust me, I'd rather go with that Chrysler, but everyone will see us and try to shoot us.
Yes, Frankie knows.
Yeah, let's try to find some wood and get a fire going. Hey Frank, let me try that future show in moonshine.
Yes, but be careful. It is very strong.
Well, I believe that. Let's see what the future has to offer for us. It tastes like normal moonshine.
Frankie said it is very special.
Get out of my way, Grandpa!
God damn it, Frank. I went too far in the future. It was terrible. The cars looked horrifying. They were cubes with wheels. The people were rude and the music, it was just noise. I don't think I want to leave to see the future, Frank. It's not the place for people like you and me.
That's why Frankie lives in the forest.